In this lesson, you're going to learn how to do some animation in your projects, and then export it to an SWF file, appropriate for the Flash player. In this session, we're not going to so much be talking about print projects, but more about making projects that can be viewed on a screen. The first project is going to have some interactions. We're going to be able to export it as an SWF file, or SWF, as some people call it, that's viewable in a browser. So first we're going to open the file. So we're going to go up to File, Open. It's in our Session 3 folder in the training folders. So here's our training file, Session 3. We're going to look in the Interactive for SWF or PDF folder, and we want the SWF file. We'll press Open. So this is a travel brochure. It has several pages in it, and I've just used some placeholder text throughout. This front page is going to link to the pages that follow it, and we'll learn how to do that later on. But on this first page, we're going to have some special interactions. The first thing we need to do is change our workspace. So if you look up here in the upper right-hand corner, it's in an advanced workspace. We need to change that to interactive for PDF. Even though we're creating a SWF file, this workspace will give us some of the panels that we need. So now let's take a look at the text frames on this page. There are actually two different frames, and I'd like to animate them when the page opens in the browser. There's an animation panel that's not present in the group of panels that we just opened, but we can access that by going to Window, Interactive, and then Animation. When I click on either of these text frames, it will open it in this animation panel, and I'll be able to adjust some of these things. So we're going to start with Come to Nebraska. So that's the name of it. We're going to choose a preset. So a preset is what will happen, how that piece of text will be animated. So if you open it, you can see all of these different presets. You'll notice that a lot of these look like animations you would see in PowerPoint. So I'm going to pick one. I'm going to put Zoom In 2D. And that event is going to happen when the page opens. So that means that on page load means that as soon as the page opens, the animation is going to start. There are other triggers you can select from, but we're going to keep it on page load. And you get to decide the duration of that animation. We're going to just bump it down to a solid 1 second, and playing it one time would be appropriate. You could also decide the speed, but for now we aren't going to change any of that. So now we're going to come to the second set of text. This one in the preset, let's have it do something a little bit different. I'm going to have it fly in from the left, but also on page load. We're going to control the timing of when this one happens in relation to the first one. So let's make the duration a little bit longer. So let's try 1.5 seconds. And it's just going to play one time, but let's look at the properties down here. Now we could have it animate from its current appearance to somewhere else, but we want it to come into its current location. So you can see here this green arrow indicates that it will start off the page over here and it will fly in this way. You can do other things like rotating and scaling and many other different options, but I'm going to leave the defaults alone. Down here, I'm going to have it fade in rather than just appear, and so it will fade in as it comes from the left. So you can see here, we have this one is preset, 1 second on page load. This one, same thing. So now we can see what it's going to look like with a little preview panel. So down here in the left-hand corner, you'll see a screen with a play button. That's going to bring us to the preview panel. You can see it previews what it's going to look like. And we can keep playing that to make sure it's exactly what we want. So we've got the Come to Nebraska, comes in, zooms in, and then the other words fly in from the left and fade in. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. Now, in this blank area, I'd like to make an interactive slideshow of some pictures of popular places in Nebraska. Ahead of time, I've taken several pictures and I've sized them to be the exact same dimension. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go back to our training files and I'm going to find our picture slideshow. We're going to go through the place option. So I'm going to go to File, Place, Session 3. We're still working in the interactive for SWF or PDF folder, and we want the slideshow pictures. So I'm going to pick all of them at once, but just to show you that they're all the same size, if I click one and I make this window a little bit bigger, you can see the dimension is 275 by 200, and they're all that way. We want them all to be the same size. So I want to select all of them, so I'm going to click on the first one, hold shift down, click on the last one, and then I'm going to press open. You can see here that the cursor is loaded with all 4 of my pictures. Now I want to place them on top of each other, exactly over the top of each other so that it looks like one picture. So I'm going to come over here and click, and without moving my mouse, I'm going to click again, one more time, and again. And you can see that they're all stacked on top of each other so it looks like one picture. My next step is to select them all and make sure that they're all selected. So let me just come over here and I'm going to drag and select them all. To make sure, I can just nudge, and if there's nothing left behind, that means I have them all selected. So I have all 4 of them selected. To turn this into an interactive slideshow, we need another panel. So under Window, Interactive, we're going to go to Object States. I still have all 4 images selected, and I want to turn those 4 images into a new object state. That's what this button on the bottom of the panel does. It looks like a post-it note. It converts the selection to a multiple state object. So we're going to click on that, and you can see that all 4 of the objects came up. I can give the object a name. So maybe I want to call it Nebraska Slideshow. And I could give each of these states a name based on what's appropriate for the image. Now, we want to have buttons that help us navigate through the slideshow. So I'm going to close this object state button, and I'm going to go to Window, Interactive, Buttons and Forms. In the option menu, you can access some sample buttons and forms. So you can scroll down and you can see that you have a ton of different options. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and you can see here I have some arrow buttons. So I'm going to drag them and drop the ones that I want. So I'm going to use these black ones. There's one, and I'm also going to get this one. There we go. I'm going to move them a little closer to my PowerPoint. And you can adjust them where they are, just like any image. So now I can collapse this. Oops. There we go. All right. So now let's start with the right pointing arrow, which is the one that I have selected. The sample button that we were provided already has actions assigned to them. Now this button, if you look at the button panel, the action is already assigned. So it's go to the next page. We don't want it to go to the next page. We want it to go to the next object. So in the actions, I'm going to delete the action by pressing the minus sign. It's going to ask, is it okay to delete it? Yep, okay. So then we can add an action we want by pressing the plus sign. And we can have it go to a destination, go to the next page, but we want it to go to the next state. So we're going to press that. You can see here that this button already has a rollover option because it's a preset. I don't have to do anything for that, but it will show me later once I've saved it. When you use the button, as soon as you move the mouse over it, something will happen. So now let's go to the left pointing arrow and let's do the same thing. Now let's preview that. So in our window, we can go to the preview down here. It's going to preview the whole thing for us. And now I can come in here and I can go through the pictures, go backwards, or go forward. So we can go ahead and condense that and move it back over here to the side. Now notice at the bottom of this first page I have some buttons. I'm going to collapse this buttons and forms just for a second. You can see here these buttons. This would take us to page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5 hasn't been animated yet. You can tell that it hasn't been animated because of the style of box that goes around it when I click on it. So let's select that one. So go to page 5, and we're going to go back to our buttons panel. And we can add the action that we want. Since this is one that I've made, it doesn't have any presets. So we're going to have to program it from scratch. So in the actions, we're going to have to say go to page, and then it's going to ask us what page do we want it to go to. We want it to go to page 5. And since I made this button, it doesn't have any rollover or click states. So we can't preview that because this software doesn't support go to page preview, but you'll see that this works when we download it or when we export it. So we can go ahead and close that. There's one more thing that we can do to make our SWF file more interactive. I'm going to close the Object Saves button, which I've already done, and I'm going to open the page panel right here at the top. In the Pages options, I'm going to go down to Page Attributes. And we can look at page transitions. And we can press choose. It brings up this panel of all of these page options that we can pick. And if we just roll over it, it will preview it. We're going to do this, which has the corner turn the page. We're going to apply it to all spreads and press OK. Now we're ready to export. First, we're going to go to the desktop and make a folder. So I'm going to just minimize my InDesign here. Close this, and I'm going to make a new folder and rename it. You can rename it whatever you want. I'm going to label it with my last name, _ SWF project, so that I can save my project there. So now I'm going to go back to InDesign. I'm ready to export. So I'm going to go to File, Export. Now I can name it whatever I want. I'm going to put it in that desktop folder. I want to make sure that it saves as an SWF file, which is a Flash Player file. And I'm going to press Save. Now it's going to bring up this panel. I'm going to do all the pages, and all the defaults are fine. You generate the HTML file, and then we are going to have it, we're going to view the SWF after exporting. I don't need to do any scaling, although we could do that if we wanted it to fit in a certain size screen. The rest of the defaults are fine because it's going to include all of the things that we have created. If we hadn't set the page turn, we could do that here, but we are going to have it export the page transitions that are already in the document and include the interactive page scroll. So I'm going to press OK. And it opens up in a view. I'm going to allow it to run Flash. And here's our page. We can scroll down here. You can see that I can click through my photos. My page scroll is here at the bottom. I already had a link where I could go back to main. The animation and interactivity for SWF files is great fun to do. But one thing that you need to remember is that Apple mobile devices don't support Flash Player. So if you're wanting to create something for a mobile device, this particular interactive will not work.